Hello, everybody. It's Dave from Gravity Whiz. Welcome. This is our 10th workshop. You started maybe almost a couple years ago now, just as just an idea that we wanted to explore, and it's been cool to see just the value kind of unfold for them, both for our customers, but also interestingly internally for us. So when we bring new wizards on board, they actually go back and watch these workshops, and it serves as a useful starting point for getting like that expert level knowledge that you need to be a Gravity wizard. So this workshop is going to be dedicated to our flagship product, Populate Anything. We lovingly call it our Swiss Army plugin because it really can just do so many things. It solves so many problems. Before we dive in, a couple quick notes. First, this session will be recorded. I'll be using the terms GPPA and Populate Anything interchangeably throughout. So if you hear either of those, I'm talking about Populate Anything. Now, the original vision for this workshop was that I was going to talk about some of the basics and kind of give you like this introduction just to the fundamentals. And then I'd move on to more advanced stuff. And then we'd end with questions. So instead, what I think we're going to do is I'm going to work through a few cool use cases. And through that process, I will both answer questions, or I will answer questions, I will demonstrate basic functionality, and I will also introduce advanced functionality kind of in context as it's relevant for each of those use cases. And of course, we will, as always, end the session with open Q&A and any of the pre-submitted questions that I wasn't able to bake into the presentation. All right, let me move this off my screen. Those are my little show notes. And then let me get my screen on the screen. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the latest version of Populate Anything. 2.1 just went out yesterday. This really isn't, it's so funny. It's not one of our most exciting Populate Anything releases, but it really does set the foundation for some big moves that we're making with this perk and also future products. I'll let you read up about it, but I will just call out one really nice thing that we experienced. As part of this move, we moved from Vue to React. And as part of that move, we weren't expecting it, but we actually saw a nice little bump in snappiness. It just loads just a little quicker. Nothing like crazy. It's not going to probably change your life, but you'll definitely notice it, I think. Okay, so now let me get these notes in a more ideal location. We're going to jump into our first use case. So we're just going to imagine that you have these relationships with some very famous authors, and you are in a position that you are able to sell signed copies, personalized signed copies of their books. And you want to build an order form for this to make this available to customers. So we're going to go to our form here. And the first thing we're going to do is we want to populate our authors. We know that we have a list of authors. They're going to actually be represented by users on the site. So every time you have a new author that you're working with, you add them as a user and you give them the author role. So how do we populate those authors into this field so that every time you add a new author in the future, they automatically show up on your order form? You don't have to come to this form and manually update it. This is where Populate Anything shines. So we're going to go and we're going to populate choices dynamically. We're going to go down to user because we're populating, again, authors that are users on the site. And you're going to see that we actually have 146 results. So there's quite a few people here. We actually want to limit this just to authors. So we're going to go to the add filter group and we're going to go to role and we're going to say role is author. And you're going to see that our results have dramatically shrunk down to 4. So now we have Gandalf the Grey, Frodo Baggins, Bilbo Baggins, and Severus Snape. Again, you're working with some very famous authors. So now after, you know what? Let's also update the title here. So this is author. And let's just do one more thing. Let's just preview this on the front end so you can just see it. There you go. That's our drop down. It has all of our authors. And if we add a new author, they will just show up here. So now we want to let the customer that's using this form, we want to let them select a book by this author. So I'm going to actually add a product field. And I'll tell you more about why I chose a product field later. But the first thing I want to do just to alleviate any confusion is let's go ahead and convert this to radio buttons. Because again, we do want a choice-based field here. So now let's call this book. And we're going to go to populate choices dynamically. And now our books are actually stored as a custom post type. So real quick, I'll show you a little bit of what that looks like over here. So this is a list of our books, and you can see which authors authored each of these books. So we'll pin that over here. Actually, maybe I should unpin these so I can see what they are more easily. And now we're going to go, since we know that they're posts, we're going to go ahead and populate posts. And again, if we come down here, let's actually populate this so we can see our results here. So we have 495 posts on this site. So obviously this is not scoped down to just the books because we just saw the books and there's only, 12? And so the way to do that is to go to add filter and we're going to go to post type. And we're going to say post type is book. And now you see we filtered it down to 12. So that's awesome. But again, we only want to show books for the selected author. So now we're going to add another filter here. And we're going to say where the author is whatever value has been selected in the author form field. So that's this one right here. And so again, don't be confused here because this author is referencing the author that is attached to the post itself. And this author here is, again, whatever author has been selected in this form field. And that's why it's in the form field values group there. Okay. So unfortunately, because we haven't actually selected an author in the editor, we can't see the results of this. We actually have to go to the front end to do that. So let's go ahead and save the form. And let's go to live preview again. And now you can see that Gandalf the Grey, all of his books have already been populated. And if we go to Frodo Baggins, we'll see his books have been populated. And there we go. So they're automatically updated. And again, if you add new books, if you add new authors, this form is completely dynamic and will update automatically with no extra work. This is super beneficial too if you end up having multiple order forms. Maybe you're targeting different demographics, different audiences, but you want to kind of share the same data. You just want to display it differently, or you want to experiment with different formats for the fields. With this, the data is kind of separated from the form. And that allows it to be a lot more portable and allows your forms to be a lot more manageable. So next, we had a good question, a pre-submitted question from Gil. Gil asked, can Populate Anything use an ACF repeater field with multiple date time rows for custom post type to auto-populate a Gravity Forms registration forms date time dropdown for each course, making it a lot easier for them to manage the form? And that's kind of what I just spoke to about how easy separating the data from the form itself makes the form so much easier to manage for your customers, because a lot of times they don't even need to interact with the form at that point. They can just go into the WordPress admin and add the data there, and then the form itself automatically updates. So in this case, this question is specific to ACF repeaters. So Populate Anything doesn't have support for ACF repeaters by default, but we do have an awesome snippet, and I'm going to show you how to set it up. So first of all, we're going to go ahead and option field here, and we're going to go to option A, and we're going to rename this to format. So again, I'm going to actually bring Gil's question about date and times. I'm going to bring it more into the book use case that we're doing here. And again, we're going to do book formats. And I'll show you this data here first, actually. So I'm going to be using ACF, and I already have some of this data set up. And so I have this book details field group. And in the book details, I have the ISBN number, and then I have this repeater field here for formats. And then for each format, we're collecting a name, a price, and a stock. So that's kind of how it's being powered on the ACF side. And now if we go here and we actually look at one of these books, you can see that I've already entered some data here. We have a hardcover is the name, a price of 28, and actually we went further. We have the stock as well, which I'll show you how to tie that into this whole system here in a second. For now, though, we're just going to look at the name and the price and figure out how to get that populated into the form. So we know we have the format. We know that we're going to populate choices dynamically. And actually, before I do anything else, let me switch this to a radio as well. I like radio buttons for demos in particular because it just makes everything visible in the front end and nothing's hidden. And so that's the main reason I'm choosing radio buttons for this demo. So now that we've selected radio buttons, we can go and we can populate this value dynamically. Oops, excuse me, populate the choices dynamically. So we are going to go to post again, and we are going to get this custom fields or metadata for the post that was selected, or the book in this case, that was selected in this field. So we're going to add a field filter, and we're going to go wherever the post ID is the value selected in the book field. So that will get us that post object. And then we can tell with the choice template, we can say, this is the specific data that we want to pull from this post. So you can see here, we can do post ID, post title, or the price. But we actually want to do an ACF repeater. So I'm going to go to formats, which is the name of our repeater field. And with the way that the snippet I'm going to share with you works, we're going to select the first index or the 0 index of that repeater. And then the snippet will handle everything else. The only thing that we care about is the property, if you will, or the subfield that we want to fetch from the repeater. So in this case, we want to use the name for the value. And we'll do that again for the price, or the label. And then for the price, we are going to do, oops, went a little too far on that one. We're going to do the price. So before I add the snippet, I'm just going to show you how this works. So what you can expect to see without the snippet. So Gandalf the Grey, we'll select one of these books, paperback. So it populates that choice there. But if we go in and look at this book, which book do we have selected? 10 Steps for Success in Middle Earth. We actually see that there's an audiobook version available as well. And that's not being populated. And again, that's simply because we're not using the snippet. So we're going to type in ACF repeater into our snippet library search here, and it is the first result. We're going to click that. We're going to go here. We're going to copy this snippet. And I am using a snippet manager. I think it's just code snippets. And I am going to go ahead and add this new snippet. I'm going to paste it in, go back up to the top. Scott, our support lead, already called this out, that would be annoying, that when you copy it, it copies the PHP tag. And while I was preparing this demo, I experienced that frustration many times. I was like, I think we definitely should remove that when we copy it, just to make it easier. And the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to give this a quick title here, so that way we can identify the snippet in the future. We'll save it, we'll activate it. And there's only one other thing that we need to do, and that is on this field, we need to activate the snippet on this field by using the class. And actually, let me show you in here in the instructions just so you can see where I'm getting this from. But this is the final step. We're going to add this class to the form and save it. Now we're going to go back and refresh this form preview. And so now when we click this, you see that both of the options are added. Even better, you'll see that it actually has a price associated with it too. And that's the reason that I chose a product field here and an option field that's associated with this product there. So that way, when we go and complete this form, you'll see that it will group this option with the product. So we'll have the book name and the format that was selected. One other tweak I'm going to make to this form, though, just so that we can see it a little easier, is this total. And let's just, oh, I don't have it selected. Let's go and name this just total. Okay, and let's go check the confirmation. I actually don't remember if I've set this up or not, and I haven't. So I'm going to go ahead and do this quick step where I'm going to add just a simple thanks for your order, and then I'm going to add pricing fields. And that will show us just a quick summary of this order. So I'm going to go ahead and close this tab, and I'm going to refresh the form preview. We select 10 steps for success in Middle Earth. We decide that we want to opt for the paperback because a signed audiobook is probably not that cool. I don't know if that exists, in fact. And now we're going to submit the form. And you can see, thanks for the order. And this is what I was talking about, where it has the product and the format that was selected, paperback. And again, this is just a kind of little bit about like understanding how to structure fields with gravity forms in order to kind of get like the desired end result. It would have been very easy to add 2 product fields there, but then you'd have 2 line items here for essentially the same product, which wouldn't have been ideal. All right. So now let's explore this idea of inventory. So you have the format, you have a price associated with it, but you don't want them to just be able to order as many of these as possible. You only have a set amount of inventory. So I've already activated our inventory perk. But when that is activated, we can go to this field. We can go down to perks, and we can see under inventory type, we're going to say simple because we don't need to do anything crazy here. We just want to apply some basic inventory. I'm also going to click this option to show available inventory so that we can see it on the front end. And I'm going to copy this template so that we can modify it a little bit. Because instead of calling this an item, we're going to call it a copy. So we only have 1 copy left, or we have 2 copies left or available. And before I save the form, I'm actually going to go up to General. I am going to go down to our choice template. And now you'll see that we have an inventory limit that has appeared. And again, this is just directly integrated with our GP inventory perk. So we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to go to Formats. And now we're going to select the stock for that first option. So now it will automatically apply that as inventory for this product. So let's save the form. Let's go to Live Preview. Let's just start here. 10 steps for success in Middle Earth. You can see that there's 35 copies. We select that. You see the total there. Let me do this one over here because I think I set one up. So Severus only has 1 book, The Horror of Hogwarts, and he has a hardcover, and he only has 1 copy available. I'm going to go ahead and snag that immediately. Let's submit the form. We see that we got it. Awesome. And now if we go back and select that book again, you're going to see that the hardcover is no longer available. It lets people know that, hey, that format does exist, but there are 0 copies available. You can't select this one. If you're going to read The Horror of Hogwarts, you're going to have to get it on paperback or audiobook. So let's go ahead and get another copy on paperback, just for fun. All right. Last thing I want to do with this specific demo is I want to talk about image choices. Our friends at Jetsloth have an awesome plugin called Image Choices, and it allows you to use images to represent your choice-based fields. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable it for our book field. Now, if we go back to our books, we'll see here again that we have this featured image already in place. And so we're going to go to the field, and under the image property, again, that magically appears once you've enabled the image choices setting. You can go down and you can select the featured image URL, and we can save the form. And we can preview this on the front end, and you can see that now it has pulled in all of the featured images for each of these books. And you can select it just as you would any other choice. And we can go back down to our Severus example. And everything works. Pretty cool. Okay. That is our first demo. And I feel like that shows a ton of the basic functionality while also kind of hinting at some of the advanced functionality you can do, particularly with ACF repeaters. Any questions before I move on to the next demo?
We did have one comment from Chris Nelson, who just said that they've always used pods for custom post types, and he wants to make a change. Which works better with Gravity, was ACF or Metabox?
I'm going to just say ACF because I don't know that it actually works better, but I will say that we have, if you're going to invest in a new ecosystem, I think the ACF ecosystem is more robust and it's more popular. And we have a ton of ACF specific resources that integrate not just Populate anything, but all sorts of perks with ACF. So I would highly recommend ACF. And it's been tried and true for me for years, even back in my early freelance days. So yeah, I'm a big fan of ACF.
Nice. We actually have another one from David Mitchell as well.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to dynamically generate an ordering form that would allow selecting at least quantity for every book or whatever item type it is, rather than just selecting one?
Read that to me one more time.
So would it be possible to dynamically generate an ordering form that would allow selecting at least, maybe he means one quantity for every book or whatever the item type is, rather than just selecting one, he clarifies after.
Oh, I think, David, feel free to respond. I think what you're asking is, could you specify the quantity versus being limited to only a single quantity per order? And if that is your question, then yes, you can order. I have the product set up to only have a quantity of one, but we could add, even for this example, let's do this really quick. We can add a quantity field. Oh, I got to spell quantity correctly. That's the magic. There we go. So we could go here and add this quantity field, and you'll see that this quantity will be attached to this product here, the book product. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to do here. I think that's it. And then we'll save. Yeah, I think, let me know if I'm not answering your question, but I think that I am answering it. So let's just go here, Gandalf the Grey. There's 36 copies of this available, and we could say we want 12 of them, and we could submit the form. And now when we go back, Gandalf the Grey, select 10 Steps from Middle-earth, you'll see that there's 24 copies available now because we just deducted 12. If I didn't answer it, David, feel free to follow up via support. I definitely would love to help you figure it out, but I think that might be it. Okay. Moving on. So this demo was inspired from a question that we received from Rob. Rob asked, would you please share any suggestions for making forms with several GPPA fields and thousands of GF entries optimally performant? So I don't know this is like one of those black box questions where I need a lot more insight in order to answer it accurately. But I just wanted to talk about like one of the number one ways to improve performance with Populate Anything, and that is integrating with Advanced Select. Rob, I know that I've already shared this one with you before, but I thought it would still be super beneficial for everyone else. So let's see here. Let me go to my GPPA plus Advanced Select one. So we have a little field here. We're just going to delete it. And we're going to go to a multi-select field. Now, also, just a heads up, I already have GP Advanced Select enabled. And we're going to go and we're going to rename this to contacts. And we're going to populate choices dynamically. And we're going to go to Gravity Forms entry. So again, this question is about populating entry data. So we have a form, and it's called sample data form. And on this sample data form, I have about 1,000 entries. So it's not several thousand, but it doesn't really matter. It's the same difference when it comes to populating the entry data. So we're going to go and we're going to add, well, first of all, just by default, if we add some properties here, let's just say entry ID, and we're going to populate the name of the contact. And we can see that we've already hit one of Populate Anything's kind of performance safety nets. And that is that it only will populate 501 results by default. Of course, we give you access to increase that if you want to, and if you feel like it's justified or necessary with the GPPA query filter. But with Advanced Select, this doesn't even matter. You don't even need to worry about this limit anymore because there's so many ways to work around it in a way that are much more performant than loading thousands of entries on page load whenever the form is rendered. So let's do that. Let's go down to perks and we're going to enable Advanced Select. And the first option that you have here is just to simply lazy load populated choices. So we can save this. We can go to live preview. And now there are no choices in this field. But when I click, you saw the little spinner and then it loads the choices. And you're going to see that as I scroll down, when I get near the bottom, oops, dang, it might have been hard to see. Well, it will load, it loads more choices. And then it tells you, hey, I've loaded all the choices. Let me try to do that one more time so you can actually see the infinite scroll at work. So let's do this first. And then let's scroll to the bottom. Oh man, it's too fast. It's just happening like that. That's the problem when you're on localhost. But yeah, so anyways, we got nearly to the bottom of those 500 first results, and then it loaded 500 more results and then obviously we don't have any results beyond that. So that's one way to do that. Again, that's infinite scroll combined with lazy loading the choices. So that way when the form renders, it doesn't actually populate anything until the user interacts with that field. So the other option, and one that I really am a big fan of, is we can actually add a filter group here. And under, excuse me, I want to search by name. So wherever the name contains the Advanced Select search value. So this is a pretty cool integration that Populate Anything has with Advanced Select. So let's save the form and let's view this again. So now when we click in, oh, it's actually unexpected. Clay, I can't decide if that's working correctly or not. My expectation, oh, I have a snippet. I was so confused. Okay. So let me disable the snippet first so you can see how this works. So by default, what it does is it requires you to search. So until you type in, I think it's 3 letters, yeah, it won't populate anything. And so this is super helpful because instead of populating all results, it will only populate filtered results, which will always return a subset of your results. It's never going to be 1,000 results. It's never going to be 500 results typically. It's going to be something more like this, where we have 4 results out of 1,000 that actually match. Okay. So the other thing that, oh, you know what else I just realized? I have another snippet active I need to disable really quick because I want to talk about another question. And just ignore me for a second as I refresh this. So yeah, so you can see it does the search and then you select it and yeah. Now that actually goes perfectly into this next question that we had. And that was, Kirk had asked basically, hey, I can't get dynamically populated search and select to clear the search text automatically. So you can see right here, I've just made 2 selections, but my search is still there, Dave. Now, in some use cases, this is gold because it lets you, if you're searching for something similar and you need to make multiple selections with that search, it's ideal to have this because then you can just boom, boom, and we've selected all the results. Awesome. But I get it. Sometimes you don't want that. And I just wanted to mention to you, Kirk, that for those cases, you can use this snippet here. It is the clear search on selection. And all it does is just removes the search value after you've selected it. Okay. The only other thing I wanted to talk about with this specific integration is, again, sometimes you may not actually want to require the search. Sometimes you may want to make it work a little bit more similarly to just the plain lazy loading where you click and it actually does show some results immediately. I know even for me personally, like when I click on the field, like I'm kind of expecting to see something. And sometimes it can even help jog your memory of like what you're looking for in the first place. And in that case, that is where this awesome snippet here, ignore empty search value, comes in handy. And I will show it to you just so you can see how simple it is. Yeah, just a little filter here. Just return the ignore empty search value property as true. And with that in place, if we refresh this and we go here, you'll see that as soon as we click, it does load options. And I think it only does 50 with this mode. And then you'll see now, this is actually a better example to show you the infinite scroll as well. And then again, as we search though, it works the same way. It just takes that search into account and it runs that search through Populate Anything's filters. Okay. Any questions on how Populate Anything and Advanced Select work together?
Yeah, I think this is from a little ways ago, but is there a way to dynamically populate the quantity fields min and max from the advanced custom fields range fields?
No, but we do have some pretty awesome dynamic functionality for it. So let me just say that it's not possible with Populate Anything, but let's just do min. I forget what this one would be. Min max range. Let's see what that gets us. Yes. So this is the snippet I was thinking about. With this, you can set a minimum. No, this is not the one. Sorry, this is for price range specifically. I'll look it up, whoever asked that question, and I will find you. We have an awesome snippet for this. I think maybe it's actually dynamic range. Oh, yep, there it is. Okay, this is the one. With this one, it's pretty beefy, but again, it's super nice because you don't need to worry about all of that fancy code above. All you'll need to do is worry about this. And so with this, what you could do is you could populate Anything values into hidden fields, and then you could use the field IDs of those hidden fields here to use those as the range for I think quantity field does support range by default. So yeah. Happy to elaborate on that via support as well.
Cool.
Any other questions?
One more quick one from Zashiba. What is that snippet interface that you're using?
Oh. You mean this snippet library? Yes. So we just launched this. Is he talking about code snippets? I don't know, but I'll talk about snippet library because I like that a lot. And then I'll talk about code snippets too. But yeah, this is this new snippet library. It's hosted on our website. It's available in the main navigation. You can just go here, search for anything that you're looking for. I think I did a demo where I did custom database was one of the search terms. And you're like, oh, boom, you find this. And this gives you a quick walkthrough on how to set up, register a custom database for Populate Anything. Perfect. How on topic. And so, for example, to install this, I would just copy it. I would go to, let me go to this tab, it's a little easier. go to snippets. And again, I think this is the code snippets plugin. Yeah, code snippets version 3.6.4. And you just go and add new snippet, paste it in, and yeah, give it a title and then activate it and you're done.
He's clarifying that he actually meant the dashboard interface.
Well, this is the dashboard interface, unless he's talking about code chest, which
yeah,
I'm happy to demonstrate that too.
Yeah, you should.
But yeah, this is code chest. Code chest is currently limited to JavaScript and CSS. Using that demo I was showing earlier, let's see here. I think this is it. So one of the cool things about code chest is that it makes it easy to copy and paste a lot of our snippets without needing to change anything about them, because it has support for these variables. So in this case, the GF form ID, and that allows this snippet to apply to this form without you having to change any code, which is super nice. Additionally, it makes sure that the snippet is output only alongside the form. So even with something like the snippets manager here for PHP, and I mean, this can handle scripts as well. But the issue with this is that you have to get like really granular about where you want to try to put it. And it's kind of tough to do. It's not the best. So let me actually go in really quick and just show you. So you can see here, you can run it everywhere, only on the admin, only on the front end, or even only once, which are all super helpful options. But what if you only want to output it with a single form, or only and wherever that form is output, because there may be multiple contexts that form is displayed. And that is the problem that Code Chest solves. It just makes your code portable with your form. Again, it literally is a little code chest that your form takes around with it. Okay. Great questions. So jump in back to the prepared presentations. The last demo I wanted to do is populating remote data. This was actually inspired because Bob had asked, and Bob, you can ask as many times as you want. We love hearing from our customers, but Bob had asked, is Airtable, or just basically Airtable as a data source, ? And he followed it up with, says, Bob beating the soon-to-be undead horse again, because Bob has asked this question a lot. But the good news, Bob, is that it is coming soon. Well, I say soon. We are going to be releasing Gravity Connect, which is all about this idea of making, sending data to remote data sources, but then also integrating with Populate Anything to bring that remote data into your forms. So as an example of that, I wanted to show you how Populate Anything integrates with Google Sheets. And I already have some stuff set up on this one to speed us along. So I have this spreadsheet here with airport codes by country. I just duplicated it online, and it's pretty beefy. Yeah, wow. It's actually beefier than I even gave it credit for when I duplicated it. But yeah, we have almost 2,000 airports here. And we want to make those searchable to our customers on our website. We're not going to go any deeper into the use case than that. So we have this airport field. We are, as always, populating choices dynamically. We've selected the Google Sheet type here. And then under spreadsheet, you can see that I have a bunch of spreadsheets that are available to Google Sheets. But in this case, we're going to select the airport codes by country, which is the sheet I just showed you. And then that spreadsheet has multiple sheets inside of it. It has the instruction sheet, has the airport codes list, and the CSV codes for matrix. We care about this one. Again, that's the one that's going to have the codes that we want our customers to search for. So also, I've already gone ahead and integrated this with Advanced Select. And so we're going to let them search for a specific airport city by the Advanced Select search value. And we are going to populate that airport code as the value, because that's what's important to us on the back end. And in the label, we'll just use the city. And again, just to show you that we have enabled Advanced Select enabled. Okay, so I'll just save this just in case I tweaked anything there, and we'll preview this. And now, if we start typing, well, first we got our click and got some initial results. But let's say that we're going to go to Osaka. Awesome. There's a few options there. We'll just select that. Let's submit it, and then we'll go into the entries on this form. Oh, so dang it! It actually does have the value. Clay, I forgot about that. It shows the label, but the code is what's actually saved. And I'll show you how to expose that. Like, so if you were sending this to like an API or you needed to send this to something else, we could just use the merge tag for airport and then do value save. So let's go back to our form. Let's do Osaka again. Oops. And let's do the Itami. And there you go. You can see that code is saved and is extractable for various use cases. What else do I want to show you with that one? I think that's pretty much it. But there was a really great question related to populating remote data sources from Modar. Modar asks, why don't you add REST API support natively? And yeah, we want to. We definitely want to. For now, and I know Modar, I know you're already familiar with this, but let me load this up for everybody else. We do have 2 experimental snippets, and this is essentially kind of the direction that we're heading with this. But what this does is it lets you register a new object type. So going back here, if you look up here, this type, you'll see that Google Sheet is its own object type. And hilariously, I just got to say, do you remember in the middle of this earlier demo, we just registered that snippet for registering a custom database? Well, you can see that database appeared here. Just sorry, a little distraction, but I just thought that was so funny because I didn't even think about the fact that it was going to automatically show up for us. But also just shows you how easy it is to install these snippets, and they just integrate so tightly with Populate Anything. So yeah. You can see here, there's this database with its own object type, and then we have the Google Sheet object type. So this snippet lets you register your own object type that can essentially ping a remote API. So in this case, I just did something very similar with Google Sheets where we're getting airport names. But you could do the same thing by pinging, a remote API like this one. Like this is just a JSON file. And you can see the data there. And with this snippet, if you have JSON anywhere, you could register it as an object type and populate data from that. Similarly, this is an extension of that snippet. And what this one does is it lets you to actually filter by data in there. So instead of just populating all airports, it would let you populate only airports where in the US, for example, something like that. So again, coming back to Modar's question, we do really want to add support for it. We have a lot of ideas on the best way to do it. Just haven't made it happen yet. Yeah, I don't really have a better answer than that. We definitely have been busy. All right, so that is the end of the prepared demonstrations. Well, I actually do have a couple from pre-submitted questions lower on, but I just want to mention there are some other things that are really exciting about Populate Anything that we can't cover today. So the next time we do a workshop, I'm going to make a point to cover them. So if these interest you, make sure to show up for our next Populate Anything workshop. One of those is live merge tags. This is essentially you use merge tags in your field labels, your field descriptions, HTML content, pretty much anywhere on the form. And you can extract data. So like addressing them by their name in the next question on a form field, stuff like that. Again, I'll go in much deeper in a future workshop. But the other really cool thing, and I will touch on this a little bit here, populating from the database. We talked a bit about how you can register a custom database, and your local WordPress database is always available by default. That's this one right here. And I mean, you can just get anything that you want out of here. So you're not restricted to the object types that Gravity or Populate Anything supports by default, because you can always go in and get this data directly from the database. All right. let's get into, well, I guess before I move on to finishing up the pre-submitted questions, were there any other questions about remote data sources?
I do see one from Brightwork here that's asking if it's possible to take the data, take that data being filled out in a form and display it back to the user in paragraph form before submission.
Brightwork, I can't resist. I cannot resist. I wasn't going to do anything with live merge tags, but you're driving me to it. So let's add a name field here. And we'll keep this really simple just for time. But we have a name. We have a paragraph text field here. And let's say we're going to populate a default value, I. And we'll get the merge tags here. So we're going to use that name merge tag. Oh, man, I'm zoomed in pretty deep. Tell you what, I'm just going to do this the old-fashioned way. It's field ID 1, so I'm just going to put those merge tags in. 1.3 for the first name, 1.6 for the last name. All right, so now we'll save this. And we will live preview. So obviously it's not ideal to show this probably by default. You can put a fallback in there. Oh, wait, did I do? Okay, I did do live merge text, perfect. I would recommend typically if you're going to have something like this, either putting it on the next page or just hiding the field until the user has entered the data. But then, yeah, as you can see here, I'll just put in Dave Smith. Oop, one more. And then you can see, boom. And then, of course, if I want to edit this, be like, oh, no, I don't want to have it. You could edit it. Alternately, you could use our read-only perk to make the field read-only. Sky's the limit. Great question.
Yeah, he did ask again. He said not to go down a rabbit hole, but did you mention that with the external data sources, you can pull in data in from a JSON format?
100%. And that was that snippet I shared from the snippet library. It's our experimental snippet. If you submit us, well, first of all, we'll put all the links in the show notes when we post this to YouTube after it's concluded. But yeah, it's really easy to do too. It does require a snippet right now.
Okay, one last one before we move on. Tom McDermott is asking, he says, I use Ninja tables that grab data from Google Sheets. Can I use Populate anything to grab that data from Ninja tables?
I'm assuming that Ninja tables is interacting with, it's storing it in a database. And if it's storing it in a database, like a MySQL database, then you can absolutely register that. In fact, let me go ahead and go to that snippet for you really quick. So ideally, Ninja tables is just registering the data directly in your field. Let me go back to just so I can show you the setting here. So ideally, Ninja tables is storing that database or that table in your WordPress database. And if that's the case, then you'll find it right here. And you just scroll down to wherever your Ninja table is and you select it. And so just for example, let me just show you. Maybe let's go to the, I have a custom table here. I have no idea what's in here. Value 1, value 2. So you can just see, this is just like a custom database table in my WordPress database. It's accessible directly to Populate anything, and you can, populate whatever you want from it. So if I wanted to do value 3, we can see what that is. Okay, boom. So yes, it sounds like Ninja tables would absolutely be compatible with Populate anything. Now, if Ninja tables is for whatever reason storing this in a remote database, as long as it is a MySQL database, then that is what this snippet does. You can register a custom database, and it's really not a whole lot of code that is required. You just basically tell it where everything's at, and Populate anything can interact with it. Okay. Just FYI, stay as long as you want. We're technically over time, but I'm determined to get through all of the pre-submitted questions because there were some really, really good ones. So stick around if you like what we're doing. Okay. Ryan asked, what's the best way to optimize performance and speed with Populate Anything while avoiding conflicts related to various caching plugin services? Examples were like W3 Total Cache or Cloudflare. So just first thing, I want to address performance. Populate Anything does, I think, 3 kind of big things to help with performance out of the box. The biggest one is very aggressive caching. So all of the queries are cached. It caches objects when it can, as well as process templates. So for example, in here, this is like a very simple template, but you can make these pretty complex because we could just add other database values. So we could combine all of the values here, for example. And especially when you're doing this with like entries, it has to go in and process each of those for each entry, for each result that it's displaying, which can absolutely be resource intensive, but Populate Anything caches all of that aggressively. Yeah, so that's a huge one. The other thing that it does is it batches and debounces AJAX requests. So what that means is that, as the user is interacting with the form, if the user is like interacting with a bunch of things very quickly, it doesn't just fire off AJAX requests left and right. It waits for a lull in activity in order to make sure it has the most accurate picture of the state of the data. And then it sends it off and it gets all of the data that it can for that request. So even if there's multiple fields that are dependent on a single field, or I don't know what the best way to say this, but if you have multiple field dependencies, like one field impacts another, and this field impacts this other one, and they like chained and everything, Populate Anything is pretty intelligent, and it tries its best to account for those dependencies and send off as few requests as possible. And then again, the last thing we've already talked about was it limits results that it will return to 500 by default, and it kind of leaves it up to you. You know your server, you know how much it can handle. If you really want to load a ton, then go for it, but it at least tries to set some safeguards in place there. So things that you can do to kind of improve performance. Again, a lot of this is going to come down to your configuration, but we talked a lot about advanced select. This is obviously specifically to populating large data sets as choices in fields, but that is still one of the most common use cases that we see. And advanced select, it just completely nullifies that performance impact. It's not an issue anymore. Another really awesome one, which I was really hoping to kind of get into today, but we just didn't have time, which is MySQL views. So a MySQL view allows you to take data from different tables, different locations in your database, and it puts it into a single, essentially, table or a view. And that makes it a lot easier for MySQL to optimize queries to that view. So you can pull, like if you had a name on one field and order totals on another field, then you could sum those order totals, store them in this MySQL view, and then query that view with Populate Anything to populate that data, rather than going out and trying to do that aggregation on every Populate Anything request.
Real quick,
go ahead.
David, I wanted to just add all the nerdy details that I could to Populate Anything and caching. You already covered some of the runtime caching that's in place. So Populate Anything has a few runtime caches. So runtime meaning if you visit the form, it'll pretty much cache all that in memory for that request. So if you are populating choices and you share that between fields, if those choices and templates have been processed before, then it's going to reuse those. So if it has done a particular query to get posts and the filters are exactly the same, you'll get the same items from the cache. As far as caching it between requests, your best options there are object caching with WordPress. So that's going to help accelerate the post object type, terms, users, etc. So when you have object caching, the most popular one that I've seen these days is Redis Object Cache. Super stable, well battle tested. It's what we use. I think you'll see a lot of improvements from using it. But when that's used, it'll take those objects, so like the WP post object, and store that in Redis. And rather than hitting the database, it'll get it from there. GP Google Sheets, we utilize transients for that one. We actually have to because Google's so stingy with their request limits. So that'll get stored to a transient. I can't think of the expiration off the top of my head, but I want to say it's like 5 minutes or so. So that'll speed things up and also help you from hitting those limits. And finally, with the sample JSON snippet, we do have transient caching in there as well. I think that stores it for, actually it looks like it's indefinite in that sample, but I keep saying this word transient. Transient is this concept in WordPress where it's essentially an option that gets stored in the WP options table, and then it has an expiration attached to it or not. If it doesn't have an expiration, the only time it get cleaned up is if you flush transients. So it's a pretty rudimentary caching setup. Also, if you do use Redis object caching, I am 95% sure that those transients go to the object cache. So a bunch of nerdy stuff there. Hopefully it helps.
Yeah, good stuff. And kind of like on the opposite side of the nerdy spectrum, two other things that you can do is simplifying your form. A lot of times, we've just seen a lot of forms in support where the form is one of those like, multi-year projects where it's like you've been iterating on it for a long time. And honestly, just taking a step back and looking at the infrastructure of your own form. We've had so many success stories where people have just said like, oh yeah, I guess I really don't even need to do this anymore. That was like an old requirement that it was just stuck around, and then we just kind of kept building on top of it. And that is always something to consider. Last thing, and I feel like this is like, so no one ever wants to hear this, but reach out to support and share like specific use cases that you're like specific limitations or performance issues that you're encountering. It's possible that we may not have a solution for you, but even if we don't have a solution for you, we are super engaged with our customers. And the more that we see people experiencing the same types of issues, the more motivated we are to tackle it. It becomes not just a niche issue for one customer, but the more we hear about it, it's the more like we just understand like, okay, this is impacting more customers than we realize, but we won't ever realize it if we just don't hear about it. So make us hear about it. All right, moving on. Another performance related question from Cooper. Cooper asks, I've encountered SQL usage issues in the past where running more advanced queries would populate anything. Any plan to further optimize SQL select queries to reduce extraneous joins and improve general performance? I'll be honest, Cooper, we have not seen, I was just speaking of this, this is not a common issue that we're seeing in support. So if more people are seeing this, please let us know so we can take a look. But yeah, I would say the best thing that you can do here is to reach out to support to us. Second best thing is MySQL views. Yeah, it sounds like, especially if it sounds like you're directly interacting with the database here. MySQL views could be huge in allowing you to query a lot of different data. Again, this is specifically because you talked about joins that were not performant. And that is what makes me think that views would be a good resource for you, because they essentially do the join for you and then have that data essentially cached for performance. Okay, I think that's it on that one. So the next series of questions are all can it do this questions. So the first one was from Steve. Steve asked, can Populate anything look up a value in a database based on a date? And this is a really easy one to demo. I have a filtering by dates set up right here. So we're going to use our books again, since you're already familiar with that. And we've populated the choices dynamically. We've selected the post type. We're filtering down to only show books, posts of the post type book. And then the last bit, and this is what you're asking here, is this post date is filtering by the actual post date. And this can apply to any kind of date object, date property on any of these objects. So post date is greater than 1 year ago. Now, before I show you the 1 year ago, let me actually do the one that will work for you out of the box. And that is just an actual date. So we'll say we want to do it basically this year. And you can see in here, we've already filtered down our 12 books to 2. These are the only 2 that were populated. And we could even go a step further. And rather than showing the post title, we could show, well, I guess we kind of want to show the post title, huh? Let's do a custom template that shows the post title. And then, is it post date? Yeah, it is post date. Perfect. And that's just going to help us kind of fact check this a little bit. So you can see this is in January 13th, 2024, and this one is April 2024. So yes, those are both this year. So now the other thing I wanted to show you here is that we do have a freaking awesome snippet. I think I have it linked. Yes, I do. Perfect. Let me bring that over. So filter results on relative dates. And so the idea here is that once you've installed this, you can use relative merge tags like this, where it's just like, hey, 3 days ago, 2 hours ago, 1 month, 1 year, etc. And now, actually, let me think. Do I already have that installed? Let's go see. I don't, but easy enough. Let's grab it. Let's copy it. Let's paste it in. Ditch that. Scott was so right. Those tags are annoying. All right. That's it. So let's save it, change it. All right. And now we're going to go back here. And since we've added that in, we can go back up to our filter and we can do, oops, let's just do 1 year ago. And so now you see that instead of 2 results, we have 3. And it looks like it got, there we go. It got this one from back in December of 2023, which is still within that 1 year mark. So that's the idea. All right, I'm gonna just keep on cruising now. Nathan asks, I have a form collecting financial data that I want to send Google Sheets for calculations. Afterwards, I need the results sent back to my website or used to populate a PDF. Would populate anything help? So short answer is yes, but it is a little bit of a convoluted process. My hot thoughts here would be to, the greatest limiter right now is that Gravity Forms does not support sending data to a feed before the form has actually been submitted. So one idea there would be to just write custom code that submits it on, you submit the first page with all the financial data, it goes to page 2. And in between there, during that process, it would submit that all the data from the first page and process a feed to Google Sheets. And then on the second page, you would use Populate Anything to then populate that data. Now, if you don't want to write any custom code, I think this would still be achievable just with using 2 separate forms instead. So form 1 collects all the financial data. It submits and automatically redirects them to form B. And then on submission of that first form, because again, it would create like a full entry and it would automatically process feeds attached to that entry, then to that form, then you could send it directly to Google Sheets. And then on form B, Populate Anything could be used to get the results. And I did miss one little step here in my notes. The idea here would be that you would use something like Easy Pass-Through, which is another one of our perks, and that lets you really easily pass data between one form and the other. And the idea there is that it would make it a little easier to sync those 2 entries, because you could essentially take all of the data from that first entry and pass it into hidden fields on the second entry or the second form. And so when that second form is submitted with all the calculation results included that were populated from Google Sheets with Populate Anything, then you'd have like one complete master entry, if you will. That's probably a lot to process. And there is one big caveat with that. And that is that Google Sheets processes feeds asynchronously. So there is a small chance that if your server is running really slow, that the data would not have arrived in Google Sheets for Populate Anything to pull it by the time that second form loads. But you could probably just, I don't even know, Clay, is it possible? I know Google Sheets uses Action Scheduler. Is it possible to bypass that on like a a specific feed?
I would have to take a look. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that one because we do route pretty much everything through Action Scheduler. Mostly, you say your server being slow, but we've also seen Google's being quite slow depending on the spreadsheet as well. And
That's
then
true.
also we utilize Action Scheduler again because of those request limits. We need to be able to retry.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So yeah, hopefully that's an interesting path forward for you to explore, but definitely some pitfalls along the way. I'd love to know where you land though. Graphicy asks, how can I enable the ability to enter other values than the source? Populating from the source is excellent, but what if I need to enter new data? So again, this is one of the ones I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding, but I'm going to pretend that I do understand and say that you want to add a new option to the form or to a dropdown. And if that's the case, then this advanced select comes in again because it adds this option here for add new option. And I actually already have this snippet set up. So let me go and activate it. There we go. And I will show you that I have it configured with this new really cool option. So I have it configured for the form. I have it configured for this specific field on this form. And then I have this insert new option set to true. Now, just to be clear, by default, it would always let you add a new option. But what this does is it makes that option, it actually inserts that new option into the database. And so that way it will be available on subsequent submissions. So let me show you what that looks like. Add new option, there we go. So if we go here and preview this, you can see that we have earth, wind, and fire, but we're kind of looking for some arcane elements. And you can see there, it doesn't find anything, but it lets us add this arcane. And now it's in the dropdown. So now when we submit this, if we go back, or we refresh this page, excuse me, you'll see that arcane now shows up there. And it's available for not only me, but other users interacting with this form. And the way this form is set up is that it's actually populating from taxonomy terms. And I should add a big disclaimer that currently taxonomy terms is the only object type that it supports persisting the choice. It will actually insert that term based on your configuration here. So other object types we'd like to add support for, just waiting for demand to manifest. So again, reach out to support and we can make a judgment call on if it's something we can do. And I will show you just one more little thing, just so you can kind of really pull it all together and make it clear. Like you can see, this is the arcane that was just added by that snippet. All right. Lutz says, how can I update the count merge tag in a form entry using a flow step after a new entry in another form? The number of results should auto update. And I should also mention that this was paraphrased. So basically, this is the idea of dynamic field values. We see this more often when it comes to things like our date time calculator perk, where we actually have an age modifier that you can use in a calculation to take someone's birthday and then calculate an age, and that's the field value. And then obviously, though, like after a year, that data is now stale because they have aged. So the problem is that Gravity Forms isn't super well designed for dynamic values like that. The closest that we've got to that is specifically that use case I just mentioned to you. And I'll pull it over here so you can see. But this is an experimental snippet that we did where essentially anytime it fetches the field value from the database, it recalculates it. And so this only works with calculation fields. But yeah, you can see just the logic's pretty simple. Is it fetching it from the database? Yes. Then let's recalculate it before we return it. So that means whatever value is populated into the entry object that you just fetched, and again, you don't even need to get that technical. If you're viewing this in the WordPress admin or you're viewing this in entry blocks, that means that it had to go and fetch that entry from the database, and that means that this code would run, and that means that it would recalculate that value, so it always keeps it fresh. There are definitely some performance concerns if you're fetching lots of entries at the same time. And the other big issue here is that it does not update the value in the database. So that means that while you would see the correct value on the front end, it would not let you filter by that value. So if you wanted to find all people that were over 18, this would not work for that. And that's why it's experimental. But yeah, I could definitely see us doing something a little bit more robust for this that could possibly even include Populate Anything's value templates. Again, this is just one of those ones that it's been pretty niche so far, but it's good to hear that you're interested. So definitely I would recommend submitting an official feature request for that so we can log it. All right, and then we just have 2 more questions. What's the most, how the hell did they do that? This is from Brian, by the way. What's the most, how the hell did they do that example you can think of for Pop Anything? This is one of those ones. It's so hard to pick. So I'm just going to link you 3 use cases, 3 spotlights that we've done with customers. I can't even like start to just explain to you everything that's happening in these with Populate Anything. But again, this is going to be the beefiest show notes because there's so many links to link. But come back to this video and we will link it for you. If you don't want to wait, then you can just go to the site and search for spotlights. Go Spotlight, Populate Anything. Oh, and I just realized I've been doing that a lot on this. To activate our site-wide search, you just do Command K or Control K if you're on Windows. And then it's so strong. Like it finds the thing that you're looking for. So yeah, and you can just kind of go through those and see them there, but we will link them in the show notes. All right, last but not least, because we have gone over a lot. Patrick, this is not really a question, but I hear a lot about your plugin, but I really feel writing clever, simple code is much better if one has the skill, but I will keep an open mind and see what it has to offer. Thanks. So first of all, I appreciate you keeping an open mind. That's step 1 of falling in love with Populate Anything. The other thing worth noting, I get it. I started as a developer. I don't get to touch code nearly as often these days, but there is a comfort in writing your own code because you understand it so well. I'm just going to point out that AI is coming for us. So you might as well get comfortable not understanding code because yeah, our days are over, mister. But the thing that I found is that, it's just far more efficient to rely on trusted sources than to try to do everything yourself. Sure, if it's truly a simple solution to a simple problem, then yeah, all day long code it. But I think you're going to quickly find that even the things that seem simple at first are often much more complicated. And having people like Gravity Wiz, who are intimately familiar with gravity forms and who are catching these edge cases that you might not even think about, but that your clients and your clients' customers will encounter. It just makes sense. You don't have to be on the hook for that. You just pass that support request on to us. We'll take care of it. With all that said, Patrick, I am super curious to hear your thoughts about Populate Anything after having attended this workshop. And that's a wrap. I'm not even going to ask if there's any more questions because we are so far over time. If anything, this workshop has convinced me that we need to do another Populate Anything workshop because I think we've literally did like maybe 20 to 30% of what Populate Anything can do. Again, we barely touched live merge tags. We didn't even get into some of the more advanced things that you can do, like the MySQL views. I would love to give you guys a demo of that. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much for attending. This was a blast. We love doing these. If you love them, Cole will be sending out a survey after this is over. Give us your feedback. We want to keep doing them, and the feedback is super helpful in both, helping us make them better for you, but then also just figuring out what you want us to cover. Okay, thanks a lot. Have a great one. And Cole, I'm going to let you hit the end button because I killed it last time.